Hello, okay, welcome to another poetry analysis. This time the poem is The Panic Bird. And like in the first poetry analysis that we did, which was City Jungle, I'm going to suggest you spend about 15 minutes in the exam to analyse and annotate this poem. Then in the second tutorial we'll look at how you organise and structure your thoughts from the annotation, which I recommend you spend about 5 minutes in the exam doing. And then in the third tutorial we'll look at how you actually write your answers using the peel paragraphs, which I suggest will take about 20 to 30 minutes in the exam. Okay, so this is the analysis and annotation, and what we're going to do, if you remember, and as I've explained in tutorial before, we're going to use the toolkit that I suggest you use, which is the acronym WITTSP, which is words, imagery, theme, tone, structure, and poetic devices. Okay, so without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so we're going to start with the words, and again, we're going to go through the order that it's given WITTSP. So, words first. Okay, so these are the words that I'm going to pick out to start with. And I'm just going through and seeing what jumps out at me. What are the words that look interesting, that are powerful? Because as I explained in the other poetry analysis, the poet has intentionally used specific words. Every word in poetry has an intention. So we have to carefully look at each of the words that are used. Not only that, but in the order that they're used in as well, how the poet has structured the poem, because everything has an intention. Okay, so we've got carrion, garbage, excrement, all these are the words which I'm finding very interesting. So I'm just underlining these, and then we'll quickly go back. And of course, as you are going through doing your reading and picking out the words, other things will jump into your head. Maybe a poetic device, maybe a metaphor. You see a metaphor, or you see a simile, or you see alliteration or onomatopoeia, or maybe you begin to get a good idea of what the tone is or the theme. And these are all things which you store away, and we can use them a little bit later. Okay, this is all very good, interesting stuff. Okay, black blood, black bile, that's miserable days, live sickle-shaped. Wow, that's an interesting word, isn't it? Sickle-shaped. Right, it's rising his ground, leaving a residue. That's an interesting choice of word right there. Foul breath. Droppings. Malted midnight. That's interesting. Malted midnight feathers and life continues, and then I'm prey to panic again. Prey to panic again. Midnight feathers and life continues, and then I'm prey to panic again. Okay, alright, so those are the words which are jumping out at me. Okay, and if I just quickly go through and have a look at them. Okay, panic bird. Okay, panic is obviously something which the title suggests is an idea in this poem, and it's a bird. We're thinking about the link between those two very different words. So the panic bird just flew inside my chest. Some days it lights inside my brain. Today it's in my bone house. Okay, it's inside my bone house. What is? I think it's referring to the panic bird. So the poet is talking about a certain animal-like thing here, a panic bird. Rattling ribs like a bird cage, so it's doing something inside my body. If I saw it coming, I'd fend it off with a machete or a baseball bat. Okay, fend it off. Okay, you fend something off if you're being attacked. Okay, so I'd fend it off with a machete or a baseball bat. Well, those are very aggressive, vicious weapons. So that suggests that what's ever coming for you is a seriously aggressive thing. Or grab its scrawny, hackled neck. Okay, well, a scrawny, hackled neck. You know, hackled is, you know, sort of those long neck feathers of a vulture, and again, you know, we have vulture further up here, so that's obviously consistent with the description here. Scrawny hackled neck, wring it like a wet dish rag. Okay, well, if you wring something like a wet dish rag, you're really twisting it, you know. So if you did that with a bird, you know, you're going to break its neck. So that's a fairly graphic image there that the poet has put into our heads. Okay, but it approaches from behind. So behind means, you know, stealthily. Too late, I sent it at my back. Carrion, garbage, excrement. Those are all very powerful words. Carrion, garbage, and excrement. Self-explanatory, really. Once inside me, it preens, roosts. Okay, preens and roosts. Okay, well, when a bird preens and roosts, it's you know, taking root. It's making itself at home, where it preens and cleans itself and, you know, stays for some time. So that suggests that this panic, once inside, is settling. Vulture on a public utility pole. Okay, that's an interesting image there. Vulture on a public utility pole. If we imagine that, you know, a vulture's sitting up there, you know, on a particular ledge, you know, they have a good, you know, picture of what's going on around them, and it can spot the carrion, the carcass that it wants to go and scavenge from. Next, it flaps, it cries, it glares, it rages, it struts, it thrusts its clacking beak into my liver. Okay, all very strong images there from all of those particular word choices, the diction that the poet has intentionally used. My guts, my heart, rips off strips. Okay, very powerful words there. You know, it's thrusting its beak into all different parts of my body and then ripping pieces off. I fill with black blood, black bile. You know, those words are chosen because they have certain connotations. Black blood, black bile. You know, black is representative of death. This may last minutes or days, then it lifts sickle-shaped wings. Okay, sickle-shaped. Sickle is, you know, representative of the Grim Reaper, so again, a death reference there. Rises is gone, leaving a residue, foul breath, droppings, malted midnight feathers. So what's left isn't very pleasant. A foul breath, you know, a residue, droppings, malted midnight feathers, and life continues. And then I'm prey to panic again. Okay, so I just want to, you know, pick up on this last part here. I'm prey to panic again. Well, prey, you know, prey means that the panic bird is the predator. So, you know, we can start to, you know, come back and understand what this poem is about. It's prey to panic. So we're talking here about the panic bird being a metaphor. Okay, and the whole poem is about this analogy. Not analogy, a metaphor. So it's actually an extended metaphor. So actually that's one of the poetic devices. So we can just circle that and add that there. Okay, so the panic bird is a predator which is preying on this poor poet, you know, and the panic overwhelms him. Okay, so those are the key words in the diction that the poet has used, and they are very good at creating, you know, certain images. Okay. And we can, you know, choose those words there. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the imagery here. If we look at some of the image, okay, in my bone house, rattling ribs, like a bird cage. Okay, so that's very good imagery there. Rattling ribs. Okay, it's to do. Okay, we're talking about the senses when we're talking about imagery. So in my bone has rattling ribs. You know that you get the idea of sound there. The idea of rattling ribs. Further down. It flaps and it cries. Also to do with sound. It rages, it struts, it rages. Okay, also to do with sound. Once inside me, it preens, it roosts. Preens and roosts is sight. It lifts sickle-shaped wings. So what you see, it thrusts its clacking beak. Is again sight. What you see, the panic bird doing. Okay, carrion, garbage, excrement are slightly stronger words, and those are almost images closely associated with smell. And if we come back to foul breath and the idea of droppings again, so there's a repetition there of excrement and droppings that are also to do with, you know, images of smell, what you might smell, and it's, you know, not very pleasant. Okay, so there's some strong imagery there. Okay, thinking about the next part, which is the tone and the theme. Well, you know, obviously the key theme here is panic and the absolute terror the poet feels, or the fear that the poet feels about the panic which creeps up on him. Okay, the tone is the anxiety. The fear. The hysteria of the panic as it creeps up on the poet. And I think this part of the poem, the last two parts of the poem here, last two stanzas of the poem, are where the, you know, the abject horror of the panic inside the poet takes shape. The first few stanzas are about you know, the panic creeping up and coming up as a surprise, and then once it's there, then it really starts to do its thing, raging, strutting, thrusting, you know, and really causing a lot of anguish and anxiety for the poet. So those are the key themes and tone of this poem. Okay, and then the last thing, which is, I think, very interesting and relevant to this poem, is the structure. Okay, first of all, let's just identify that there are 4-line stanzas throughout. Now, this last stanza, the sentence is actually run over, but that should be there. 1, 2, 3, 4. So there should be 4 lines in the last stanza as well. So you've got 4 equal stanzas. Okay, so 4 equal stanzas suggests that they are regular, which is equal to a kind of normal order. Okay, but within that normal order, if you look at the punctuation of the poem and the structure within that 4-line stanza, it's extremely disorganized. So I'm just going to make a note here. Let's just look, the panic bird just flew inside my chest, so there's an enjambment from the title to the first line. That first line on the first stanza ends with sun and then goes over to days. Then there's a pause. Here, if I saw it coming, I'd fend it off with a machete or baseball bat. And what you see is this punctuation and structure gets increasingly more disjointed. That's another word we'll add there. Disjointed as the poem progresses. Disjointed here. And what we can summarize is that it's very disruptive. Which, you know, I mean, it almost leads to sort of an anarchy or chaos. Let's just write chaos down here. Okay, so I think that's something that the poet has intentionally done, to structure the poem in this way. There's 4 regular lines in each stanza, which suggests sort of a normal and ordered structure. But then within that, the rest of the poem is very disjointed, disruptive, and disorganized, with, you know, lots of interesting punctuation, which reflects how the panic creeps up onto the poet and, you know, completely attacks his normality. So the structure of this poem is very relevant in the analysis. So okay, we're going to leave it there. We've covered all of the main areas of the WITTSP toolkit, and we're beginning to really see the key points of this poem. It's an extended metaphor. It's all about how the poet sees panic, and he's suggesting it's like a bird which, you know, inside of him creates all sort of anxiety, hysteria, chaos, and causes him a lot of pain and anguish and terror. And that's how the panic feels to the poet, until he can get rid of it. And then, you know, he continues until he becomes prey to the panic attack again. I'm returning quickly to the idea of poetic devices up here. We said that an extended metaphor was the entire poem. We do have some other things. If you look at bone house, bird cage, if you look at it, ringgit, like a wet dish rag. If you look at it, rattling ribs, where else have we got? We have black blood, that's the one I'm looking for, black blood, black bile, sickle shapes. Okay, so we have some alliteration with the consonants and some assonance with the vowel sounds there through the poem to draw attention to certain parts. We also have some similes. I'm just trying to get a different colour for those. Okay, so like a bird cage, like a wet dish rag. Okay, so there's also some similars going on there as well, so we've got some similes. Okay, so just to add that last part to the poetic devices. Okay, so that's the analysis and the annotation of the poem done to begin with. I think we've pulled out quite a lot of ideas and interesting points in the analysis of the poem so far. What we will do is then we will take this and go to tutorial 2, where we will structure and organize all of these thoughts and ideas into more coherent paragraphs and stuff that we can then use in constructing our answers, which will be in tutorial 3. Okay, so let's leave it there for today. Thank you very much.